Okay, well today I'm going to make a like a stew or a soup. Very simple, something that I tend to do maybe 3 or 4 times per week, especially if it's a busy week. I prepare one of the components maybe on the weekend, and I put I prepare the component on a weekend, and then I put it into, or on a day when I'm not very busy, but I know that I've got a busy week coming up. I'll prepare the rice, because the rice portion is what would take the most time, and sometimes I don't have time to prepare the rice, so I prepare it in advance. Put the rice component along with a lot of other ingredients into a 16-ounce wide mouth jar, seal that jar, or seal those 4 jars, and then put the 4 jars of the rice mixture into the refrigerator, so that throughout the week I've got something that I can prepare very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and make that soup. Now, I'm not making the rice component, I'm using the rice component today. So today's video should be really quick. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut up an onion. And my method of cutting up an onion is probably not the way that a chef would do it, but it works okay for me. So if you're a chef, maybe you'll get a good laugh out of it. Okay, I like to take like a whole chunk of onion off so that I'm down to what's not crinkly. Okay, so now I've got 2 halves, and I'll go ahead and slice. So now I've got little bits of onion. Let's do the same thing to this half. All right. Let's get a big old pot. One big old pot. Throw the onions in the bottom. Usually I like to use all organic ingredients if I can, but I could not find small onions that were organic, so I went with conventional onions that are not organic. And that was a red onion, just in case the camera didn't pick up the color. It's a red onion, very small. There were 7 of them in this 2-pound sack. 7 little onions in a 2-pound sack. Okay, a can of corn. Where did the corn go? What we've got here is organic, no salt added corn. Oops, not sure. Yeah, that showed up. I like to shake the can of pretty much anything that's a mixture of solids and liquids in the hopes that the solids will move away from the bottom of the can into the liquid so that it pours out more easily. The corn, I don't think it was really necessary to do that, but the beans, I think it makes more of a difference. Done with that can. Okay, so now I'm going to add some beans. In this case, I'm mixing the soup along with the beans because minestrone has beans. So I'll go ahead and open up the minestrone. And again, what I'm doing now by shaking it, I'm trying to get the things that would cling to the bottom of the can, I'm trying to get them shaken loose so that they'll flow out more easily. I'll probably still have to use some high pressure water to get what's at the bottom of the can out, but this should help loosen some of it up. And the soup is basically to add flavor and beans. Generally, yeah, you can see the vast majority of what was in there came out. I'll add just a little bit of water to rinse the rest of it out. But again, the soup is primarily for the beans and for the flavor. If I had added just straight beans, then I would add a second can, and that second can would be a soup, and that soup would contribute flavor to the overall soup, to the overall stew, or whatever it is that you would call this mixture. Okay, so far I've added a bean soup to corn and a raw red onion that was diced, or something similar to diced raw red onion. Next I'm going to add my 16 ounces of the rice that I've prepared. Now in this, usually in the rice, it's not mandatory, but I usually like to add some kind of a meat component. And in a future video, I'll show how I make the rice component of this stew. But tonight, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use one that I've already pre-made. And I think you can see right here that the meat that I chose to use was bacon in this preparation of it. So I'll go ahead and I'll dump this 16 ounce. Now note that there is not this stuff is going to be able to slide right out of the jar because it's what's called a wide mouth. It's a canning jar, and it is the style of a wide mouth. I don't know what the other style is called. It might be like a jelly jar. I don't know for sure what it is, but the wide mouth, if you're going to do this, I think the wide mouth is the way to go because the food can slide right out of the jar into the pot. But the main reason I bought these, when I bought them decades ago, these jars, was so I could stick my hand in and clean the jar. Just like with the glasses that I buy, I like to be able to put like a scrubby on my fingertips and get down so that I can really clean the jar. So this is a wide mouth 16-ounce canning jar, and we'll shake the contents out into the, you can see it came out, that jar is pretty much clean, and there was no rim here to cause the stuff to get stuck. It just slides right out as long as you get a wide mouth canning jar and not the other style. I'll rinse that jar out later. I won't waste your time with that. Let's get something to break up this premix. Let's see what you're looking at. I'm not sure you can see what I'm doing. So I just sliced what I took out of the jar. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Slice it a little bit more. The idea is to mix it all in there. And so what I've got now, I just added my rice component, and so what I just did was that Mexican trio of rice, beans, and corn. This has fewer beans in it than what I would normally do, but it's got some beans, so the rice, the combination of the rice, the corn, and the beans is supposed to give a pretty decent protein. You know, it's like 3 components of a really nice protein, I guess. So I'm mixing it all together. And I'll probably heat this up until it hits a temperature all the way through of about 170 degrees. And then, so right now I'd say the rice component is nicely mixed in with the corn and the beans and the tasty soup and the healthy onions. What I should say is, what I've done with the rice component and what I've done with the onion, I know I'm going to sleep really good tonight because of the ingredients that went into that rice component and because of the red onion. There's no doubt in my mind that tonight I am going to sleep really nice. So this recipe here, well, when I make the rice component in another video, I'll probably explain what I'm going to try to explain now. I've been reading multiple books about brain health, and one of the key ingredients in the rice component is chia seeds, ground up chia seeds. I grind them in my coffee grinder and I add them into the rice component, and the chia seeds really help you get a good night's sleep. You can eat them any time of day. It's not like they'll make you tired, but when you do go to bed after eating the chia seeds, your sleep should be much more sound than if you had not been eating the chia seeds throughout the day. Something good happens with the chia seeds. And the book that I read, let me go get the book. This is one of those 3 books. This is the book that explained to me about the chia seeds. It's called Brain Food: The Surprising Science of Eating for Cognitive Power. It's written by Lisa Mosconi, PhD. I'm not sure what that means. But her life study is studying Alzheimer's disease, and her life's work is basically helping to keep brains healthy. And her recommendation of chia seeds helping people sleep better, I'd have to say is spot on. And the recommendation that those chia seeds be ground up, I'd also have to say is spot on. Excellent book and excellent strategy of grinding up those chia seeds. So, and she also recommends adding Parmesan. So there's two things that I'm going to add to this once it's heated up. Again, I'm going to target roughly 170 degrees. And the two things that I'll add to this after it's cooked will be a little fork. This is a little plastic fork. It's much smaller than a normal sized fork. Here's a normal sized fork, there's the little fork. So I'm going to do a little forkful of salmon roe, otherwise known as caviar. But salmon roe is the roe of choice, the fish eggs of choice that I go to. So it's going to be one little scoop. Now, a little jar. This little jar of caviar costs somewhere between $14 to $22 depending on where you're getting it, or let's say $14 to $25 depending on where you're getting it from. Maybe even a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, if depending on where you are and the difficulty of getting the supply. But because it's such a little fork and because it's so expensive, I use the little fork so I don't overdo it with this. It's basically one little forkful, and I usually get about 6 or 7 little forkfuls, so that would be 6 or 7 meals worth of caviar out of the jar. So I'd say I'm using less than $5 worth of caviar per meal. But the caviar is one of the things that Lisa Mosconi in this book says is really good for your brain health. So to me, I think it's worth it. The other thing she says to add is when you're having chia seeds, a good complement for those chia seeds in terms of brain power is Parmesan cheese. So I will use this cheese grater to grate some Parmesan cheese into the soup, and I'll use the little fork to scoop some salmon roe into the soup, and that'll basically be it. I think I can actually turn the camera off at this point. That's basically all that there is to this meal. I don't know that I'll eat the whole pot. Sometimes I'm actually hungry enough to eat the whole pot. I don't think tonight's going to be one of those nights. Tonight will probably be half the pot. And I'll play how much caviar I put into that by ear. I'll play that by ear. That's it. Have a good night. Bye.